Hey, my name is Tiago Luzvargi, and I am a second year medical student studying at the University of Ottawa. So welcome back to my channel. And today we are going to be talking about how I studied last year and how I'm adjusting my study techniques this year. And hopefully that'll be a good start for you as you begin your studies or continue your studies. And so if you're watching this, I know that you're probably a high performing student and you're slightly interested or very interested in becoming a doctor one day, or you just want to improve your habits. But I know that with that comes a slight perfectionism, and that often creeps into your mind as doubt or worry. Like you worry if your plans are going to work, if how your study techniques will work. I understand that. I've been there. Sometimes I still kind of dip back into that kind of thought process. And I just want to say, you're going to be okay. I'm going to show what I do. There's tons of videos out on YouTube about what other people do. You're going to survive. All right. Before we start though, I want to try and hit the target behind me with some cards, these golden plastic cards. I'm practicing to kind of beat Rick Smith Jr. Ready? I'm going to try and no look. Hey, that was the first one. That was legit the first try. I have no other take. I'm not even going to try again. Maybe at the end of the video. Okay, so let's start by going back to how I studied last year. I didn't have a very structured way to begin with, studying, because I took a little bit of a break from undergrad and then got accepted to medical school. And so it's just a whole other ball game there. Right from the beginning, I felt like there was just so much content and I didn't know how to handle it. Like most medical students, I turned to doing flashcards, specifically ANKI flashcards. And I still use them today. Like that is my main bread and butter of how I study. Now, why would I do that? Okay. ANKI flashcards is a really good form of spaced repetition, right? So what is spaced repetition? Now, a quick history about spaced repetition is that it was first mentioned, or the term was coined by Hermann Ebbinghaus. And the reason why it's effective is because there is a well-known concept of the forgetting curve. The curve shows that after you learn something new, you only have just a couple of days before you forget close to 80% of what you learned. The curve goes down exponentially. So you want to do your best to combat that. And research suggests that humans forget approximately 50% of what they learn within an hour, and an average of 70% within 24 hours. So we're not good at holding information, a lot of information long term, right? So by repeating your study sessions of the same material, you increase the amount that your brain retains. And you're telling your brain that this information is important. But there's a caveat. You can't just read the information passively. You have to actively retrieve the information in your head for it to be effective. It's just like going to the gym. If you lift a small weight, you barely have to work for it. And your muscles aren't going to grow. You're not stretching them. You're not working them out. However, when you lift heavy weights, you're like shredding those muscles. You're ripping them apart. You're allowing the growth process to occur, right? So it has to be hard. You have to sweat it out. And I struggle with that too. Sometimes I sit down and study and I just don't feel like it, or it's challenging. And I have to remind myself that that is the process of studying. So when we study, our brain needs to be challenged in order for it to be able to store all that information long term. And the beautiful thing about ANKI is that you can set the amount of time that can pass by before you see the same piece of information again. So the setup I use, I'll be linking in the description down below under the resources. And just to give you an idea, I have 3 main buttons that it clicks. So hard, I'll see in 15 minutes again. Good, I'll see in 1 day. And then easy, I'll see in 13 days. And all of those are variable. Another method of understanding and memorizing information that I used was to draw out diagrams on my laptop. And I would do this a couple of times and use different colors to color code what I wanted to pay attention to. And I didn't do this often, but when I did, I would take a screenshot of it and then turn it into a flashcard. And I found that the reason why I did that is it took too much time to draw out the diagrams. And so I decided to focus mainly on the flashcards, but it was helpful. So if there's a particular disease that you want to learn, that you want to master, then you can write out the cause, clinical presentations, diagnosis, treatment, and maybe redraw it, or you can take a screenshot and then use it as a flashcard. Now, I have a 2-in-1 laptop, which has been helpful. You could do this on your iPad or your 2-in-1 laptop. But I don't do that too much right now. I haven't done it at all yet, and I'm almost a month into school. But it is that extra little add-on or extra technique that can help you, because you have to visually process the information, draw it out, choose to add certain things and leave things out. So it is part of studying, and I would say it's a pretty good studying tool. But that's something you're going to have to try yourself, test it out, and decide what works best for you. I just want to pause here for a second and say that if you find any of this information helpful, then please gently hit that subscribe button, like this video, and comment one action step that you're going to implement this week to your study techniques. Okay, just one. Comment down below. All right, let's continue. Moving on to note taking. Last year, I experimented with different methods of note-taking during the lecture, such as writing with my stylus, typing beside my PowerPoint, and after a lot of trial and error and watching to other tutorials and how other people do it, I landed on one, sort of. I still kind of mix it up, right? So my main goal when I am listening to a lecture is to understand the overall picture and outline. You want to go for the big idea. What are they trying to tell you, from afar? And you can do this before the lecture, during or after, right? So it's up to you. And as of right now, I am writing out the outline of the lecture as I listen to it or go through it the first time. So as the professor is going through each slide, I have an outline, whatever's on top of the slide, and then I'll have the subheading points or subcategories, just so that when I go back, I can just look at the bullet points and have an idea of what was covered. I find this is really helpful because if you write down like word for word what the prof says or word for word what the slide says, it's useless, and it's just a lot of information to filter through when you go back and study your notes. So during the lecture, I'm paying attention to what the professor is saying, and I'm also doing like a Cornell version of taking notes by writing down the outline and also questions beside the slides or in the outline, because I find that it's better to write down questions rather than answers, because when you revisit them, when you visit your notes later, it's going to force you to think about the answer and find it. If you don't know the answer, you have to search for it, right? So it's causing an active process in your mind. It's not passive. If I find the question too difficult, then I'll convert it into a flashcard and I'll master it over time. After the lecture, I'll open up Notion and start to write out an outline of the lecture and create toggles with questions and answers. And I love this because this is a version of the Cornell note-taking system where you can start with the question and then it forces you to actively think about the answer. And recently, I started directly writing in Notion, so I don't have to keep jumping back and forth from OneNote to Notion. If you want to know exactly what I'm doing, I'll have the lecture on my computer and my Notion tab right beside it. And then I'll have my headings, title of the lecture, and then I'll have the objectives and the subheadings for each slide or category. And within those, I'm going to be writing down questions so that when I go back, I can just toggle it and see the answers. And I find for me that is a very effective way because I first see the question and then I'll see the answer. I noticed that for me, I was jumping back and forth between OneNote and Notion, and I figured I got to cut one of these guys out. So sometimes I'll like drop my PowerPoint slides in OneNote, but I don't use it too much at the moment. If you want a special technique when reviewing your notes, then you want to be using the FEYNMAN technique to make sure that you really understand what you're reading. The FEYNMAN technique is when you take a complex topic and you try to teach it to a 5-year-old or somebody that just doesn't know the lingo. So if I were to study the oral cavity, that's what we did in week 1, and I wanted to make sure that I understand how cavities are formed, then I would say something like, there are bacteria that live in your mouth, and when you eat bad food like sugary foods and sugary drinks, along with not brushing your teeth well, the bad bacteria grow and become strong and form a plaque, kind of like a shield. The bacteria turn the sugars into acid and then start to destroy your teeth. So that's an example of how you could simplify a topic and make sure that you truly understand it. And I'm pretty sure that a 5-year-old would have an idea of what that means. So I know what I mentioned is a lot, so let me quickly summarize what I think would be best for you to at least try as you begin your studies. Number 1, before the lecture or during the lecture, create a topic skeleton outlining the subtopics covered. Number 2, condense the lecture content into note form bullet points or toggles if you're using Notion, because you just want an overview of the main principles. 3, grapple with any tricky areas until you feel that you could explain them to a 5-year-old. And 4, make flashcards of difficult points or isolated facts, but don't overdo it. Too many flashcards are going to hinder you. It's going to make you miserable. And so when I'm going through my flashcards, if I know something that is obvious, for example, there's an arrow pointing at the trachea, I'm never going to get that wrong. So I just delete those. So if you come across, if you're using somebody else's deck, or you're making flashcards, but eventually something becomes so easy that you literally don't have to see it again, delete it. The less flashcards, the better. It's just a tool to help you memorize facts. If you guys think any of this content is really complicated or you want anything fleshed out, then make sure to join my Facebook group, Unstoppable Students, which is really a group of high-performing students interested in bettering themselves, their productivity, their study techniques, and you can post any questions. I think I'm going to be doing a live in that group in the near future just to answer questions. There's a lot of medical students in there, so make sure to join the group and I'll see you there. All right, on to the last part, which is resources, and I think you're gonna love this one. There are plenty of resources out there for students to strengthen their learning process. Unfortunately, I find that the companies know that because we're gonna become doctors, they make it really expensive, and so I try to go for the free ones first before investing money. So let me describe to you some of the resources that I used, and then you can go test them out or ask friends who use them as well. To see if that's something that you're into. Number 1 are notes from students in the year above me. This was a great resource and one I use again this year because they have summarized the answers to each objective listed in the lectures. This saved me a ton of time from having to go and find the answer myself in the lectures, and it just helps me to just focus on understanding why the answer is what it is instead of spending time looking for it. Also, some students create amazing condensed notes based on the lecture, and they have been really great to look at and get the overall picture. They have images, literally amazing, but these are only available to you Ottawa students. So if you're another student from another school, make sure to check with your school to see if there's some type of initiative where you get second year, third year notes. It's truly amazing. Number 2, ANKI flashcard decks. The flashcards that I use were made by a previous second year student, so I know that these flashcards are relevant to what I'll be learning in class because it's a mix of lecture material and content from the first aid textbook. These flashcards, unfortunately, are only available to you auto students because we cannot share content shared within the lecture. However, good news is that humans are the same worldwide, and there are pre-made decks made for the USMLE. I know that one deck that people can use are ANKI flashcards. You can look this up on Reddit, and I'm sure there's tons of other flashcards, and you can also look up on YouTube for more information about those. The third resource is Osmosis, and I used Osmosis primarily to watch videos summarizing topics of certain diseases because it helped me visualize what I'm seeing instead of just reading. I don't like reading textbooks. I'd rather watch a video and then take notes as I'm watching and then make those into flashcards. Osmosis has pre-made flashcards for a lot of their content. My favorite feature about Osmosis is the question bank feature, because I'd rather practice questions than keep looking at slides or the same notes over and over, because the questions are going to force you to dig deep and remember what you learned, and they will prove to you, or you have to prove to yourself, that you truly understand the content. And the only way you can do that is by grappling with it. So I like Osmosis for that. I don't have a subscription yet. I might get it soon. We'll see. Resource number 4, Boards and Beyond. So I watched some Boards and Beyond videos with a friend who had an account, and they were very helpful, as the videos get to the point and only tell you what you need to know. I believe they have questions too if you pay for the subscription. I only watched a couple, but everybody who has used Boards and Beyond that I know loves it, and they still have subscriptions. So I highly recommend checking them out. 5th are MEDBULLETS. This is a great website to do practice questions, and just the process of reading a practice scenario, a case, will get your mind thinking like a clinician, or the way you should on an exam. You have to balance and weigh kind of these options, because it's multiple choice, and I like it leading up to an exam. It kind of prepares my mind to be in that spot. They do have a free version, so you have access to a select bunch of free questions, and then if you want to upgrade and see more questions, you can pay them and then get access to a lot more. Resource number 6 is ONLINEMEDED. Now, I didn't use this resource much. I only discovered it towards the end of the year, and I already had so many resources that I use that you don't want to spread yourself thin. So I just felt like throwing this one in there just in case one of you guys want to use it. The nice thing is that they have free videos that explain the topics in depth and help you understand it better. I think they also have a question bank, but for that you do have to pay. It's another resource that you can use, and I just wanted to include it for you. All right, so that's pretty much it for resources that I used last year, and I'm going to be using some of them again this year. They're going to be listed down below in the description, so check them out and see what you like. I just want to remind you that you don't need to spread yourself thin with the resources. Just pick one, master how to use it, or pick a couple, and you don't have to spend additional money to learn this content. Everything should be straight out of your lectures, and it should be good enough. But if you want extra support, go for it. I recommend it. Hopefully this video provided you with some clarity so that you can begin studying with some confidence, and now you have access to resources, or you know of some of them, so you don't have to be as afraid as your tests start creeping up. So I just want to recap the most important points. So 1, outline your lecture. 2, condense your notes. 3, understand the concepts and be able to explain them. And 4, memorize by making flashcards of difficult points or isolated facts, but don't overdo it, right? If you start with flashcards, you have to keep them up to be effective, and if you have too much, it's just easy to fall behind. If you like this video, then you're definitely gonna like this playlist that I made for you. It takes you from the beginning of my journey from first year medical school up until now, and I give you some tips along the way. Now before I close off, I want to try again with the card and see if I can hit that target. I'm not looking at it, I know roughly where it is. Nope, not as good as the first one. Nope. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment, and I'll see you in the next video.